All right, our regularly scheduled council meeting December 7th is now in session. Would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Clark.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brinkman.
Here.
Councilmember Cernanik.
Present.
Councilmember Cole. Here. Councilmember Stallman.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
Councilmember Trujillo.
Here.
Would you all rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to request an item be added as item 9C.
9C.
And that would be consideration of a motion to amend a purchase contract for 2009 West Littleton Boulevard.
The purchase contract for West Littleton Boulevard?
Not the whole boulevard, Mayor.
Okay.
2009, a building at 2000. We already bought Littleton Boulevard from the state of Colorado.
Okay.
We own that. This is to sell a building at 2009 West Littleton Boulevard.
Oh, that's the address of the building.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Sternberg.
And it's been under contract, and the proposed purchaser wants to extend the inspection period. So we'd like to have council authorize that so that the attorney could amend it and you could sign it and give them another 45 days.
All right.
All right.
Any objections? Okay.
I'd like to add an item
Yes, ma'am.
to that section D. I'd like to add, in case we need to change the workshop date, depending on what we say about the furloughs.
So this would be 9D?
I thought he just added C.
Yeah.
This would be D.
D. Okay, for workshop date. Discussion. Okay. Any objection to that?
Clarity on that? I thought we had already determined the date.
Well, I'm going to raise an issue when we get to the furloughs that might affect that. So I wanted to have it on the agenda, and we can either then ignore it or not.
Okay. Any other changes? Then our agenda is approved with those two modifications. Minutes from the regular meeting of November 16th.
I have a couple of changes on page 11, line 365. It was moved by myself. I made that motion. And on page 12, line 370, the motion, actually, I guess that's correct. Motion, no, the motion failed.
That's correct, because it took 5 votes to pass.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I
Yes,
read
yes,
it
ma'am.
again, and
Yeah.
motion failed.
That's
but
accurate. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Thank you.
did change it, but it automatically put that in.
Technology. Yes, sir.
There's a couple of names that are misspelled on page 10. Mr. Abear's name is misspelled, and on 11, Mr. Coffrin's name, I believe, is misspelled. Joe probably could tell you the correct spelling.
Okay.
Coffrin's on 337.
And Hebert is H-E-R-B-E-R-T?
H-E-R-B-E-R-T.
All righty. Anything else? Bruce.
Wendy, on line 244, I think you want to stick the word meeting in after January 11th, 2011.
Okay.
Anybody else? When those minutes are
Oops,
approved.
one more.
Oop.
Half a second. On page 4, lines 112 through 114, excuse me, 113 and 114. At the end of 113, add the word prior, and then discussions, 114, by having the council document state dates. And in 113, the plural issues should be singular.
Okay. Any other changes? Going.
Sean.
Those are approved as changed. New city employees.
Mayor, I have two names from HR. I don't know if I'll call out your names if you're here. Kimberly Erlitzen. Kimberly, can you just stand up? Kimberly is a new police dispatcher. She moved here about, just recently from Minnesota, and where she was a 911 dispatcher with Ramsey County. Is that St. Paul? Yeah, Ramsey County, St. Paul, so it's in the Twin Cities area. And so she's just moved here from Minnesota, moved back here to be close to family, but she's going to join our police dispatch. And then Kate Soap. Kate, are you here? Oh, you're right there together. Okay. Kate is our new police administrative coordinator for the Littleton PD, and she moved here from Texas. So we have Kate from Houston and Kimberly from St. Paul. Kate's been here about a year and a half, been working in the marketing department for a car dealership. I had a chance to meet her. I haven't had a chance to meet Kimberly yet, but asked her why she wanted to get involved. She wanted to be involved in something a little more involved in the community. So she'll certainly see a lot of the community in the police department. And she's already become a member of the Littleton Corral, so that's nice. So I'd like to introduce Kimberly and Kate to you as they join the Littleton family.
Thank you. Welcome to Littleton. We appreciate you coming down to introduce yourselves, but you don't have to stay for the whole meeting, even though it will be exciting. All right, that brings us to guest citizens, and the first group of guest citizens we have is for the 2011 Littleton calendar. This evening, the Littleton City Council is pleased to recognize the winners of the 2011 Littleton calendar and annual report photography contest. For the past 31 years, photographers have been shooting their favorite scenes in Littleton for entry in the Littleton Calendar Contest. 6 members of the Littleton Fine Arts Committee selected the winners from 248 prints submitted by 71 entrants. In addition to the beautiful photographs, the calendar features the City of Littleton annual report. The popular calendar is available the first week of December at the Littleton Center, Bemis Library, the Littleton Museum, Town Hall Art Center, and from the calendar's generous sponsors. The major sponsors are Colorado Business Bank, Chase Bank, Bradford Auto Body, Western Welcome Week, Life Care Centers of Littleton, GDM Management, McDonald's, Remax Classic, Holly Walker, Steinley Realty Services, Littleton Adventist Hospital, Rinke Brothers, Stu Maher Commonwealth Realty Services, and Aspen Grove Lifestyle Center. Additional sponsors are Lutenbach Insurance Agency, Henry's Jewelries, Marie Callender's Restaurants, Encore Brokers, and Monty Nuss Photography. And when Jim reads off your names, if you can come down, and I have to say that every calendar is a great calendar, but this year's calendar was just exceptional, I thought. So when you read your names, if you'll come down, please.
For January, the winners are, winner is, David Winger. For February, Pete Varney. For March, David Irie. For April,
Must all be out shooting something, Mayor.
April is Bruce Keegan. May is Lynn Ferrer. June is Arnold Okerman. July is John Grevilius. August is Paul Lindberg. September is Claudia Canguila McAdam. October is Brian Weaver. November is Jeff Gavel. December is Fran Manio. And the cover goes to Edmund D. Rena. Edmund D. Rena. And let the official photographer get busy here.
Claudia's up there.
We do extend our sincere appreciation to the calendar vendors for their skill in creating and preserving the beauty of our city.
All right, next we have guest citizens of South Denver Heart Center Foundation. The South Denver Heart Center Foundation is a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing cardiac care to the residents of the South Denver metro area. It does this by conducting programs of contemporary cardiac service through teaching, research, and other programs related to cardiac care to both the public and the physician population. Littleton Fire Rescue accepted a generous donation of 6 specialized electric coolers from the South Denver Heart Center Foundation. This is a great partnership between emergency medical services providers, hospital emergency rooms, and cardiologists, which will improve care for the cardiac arrest victims. These coolers allow firefighters to produce cutting-edge treatment by inducing hypothermia in cardiac arrest patients en route to the emergency room. Hypothermia after cardiac arrest is a proven therapy to reduce brain cell death and allow the patient to make a full neurological recovery. Littleton Fire Rescue and the Littleton City Council would like to express their deep appreciation to, and if you'll come down when I read your name, Carl Van Benthuizen.
Van Benthuizen.
Benthuizen, thank you, who's president of the South Denver Cardiology. Shelley Whitmore, community liaison. Jeb Burchenall. Is Jeb here? Okay. Brenda Lambert, CEO with South Denver Cardiology Associates and Executive Director of the Heart Foundation. We want to thank you all.
And Mayor, I think Chief Mullen and Chief Sino would have a token of appreciation they'd like to present to these group.
Good Mayor and good Council. This isn't the first time that South Denver Cardiology has come to our assistance. We've enjoyed a long and fruitful relationship with them. I truly believe that the citizens of Littleton are better off because of the work at South Denver Cardiology. So I would like to present a token of our appreciation with a wall plaque with Littleton Fire Rescue to these good folks.
And Chief, do you want to give them the history of medallions as far as fire protection is concerned? There we are. Which is the when fire protection was begun in the United States, it wasn't necessarily extended to all the facilities that were in a community or the neighborhood. You actually contracted for that fire protection, and that fire protection was denoted on the building by the medallion that was placed on the outside of the building. So you get a little special attention this way.
I didn't do it.
It was your name, though. It says I'm stupid.
Mr. Mayor, can I comment before they get out of here?
Sure, please do.
When we recognized the gift earlier this year, one of the things that I pointed out is not just the likelihood of returning the person to full neurological function, this also reduces the long-term care and other complications that are involved. So getting this person to the hospital as quickly as possible with that unit has far-reaching ramifications, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief. Thanks, everybody. All right, next we have Pam Chadburn regarding residential lighting.
I'm going to ask if I can use the projector here, so.
I think we're experiencing technical difficulties.
I can talk anyway. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live at 5402 South Nevada Street, which is at the corner of Crestline and Nevada, at the edge of the so-called football in downtown Littleton. And I'm here like for the third installment of talking about street lighting in downtown Littleton. I appreciate your attention to this. It's a little technical, more than I thought it was. And I also never expected to learn about street lighting to the extent that I have. And I don't want to impose that learning on you. So let's hope that I've picked some of the highlights of what I've learned to show you tonight. Let's see, I put in on my title page that this is an interim response. I was hoping to have a lot more data. I don't have it by now. But I did get a hold of a street lighting plan layout, which Mr. Bloston prepared. And that's big enough to have something to talk to you about, so that's what I'm going to show tonight. And I listed my impacted roles as resident, property owner, I'm a city taxpayer, I drive cars here, and I walk around downtown. So all of these things are impacted by street lighting. And I'm not saying I'm...
Pam, excuse me, we can hear you up here usually really well, and I'm hearing you, but folks in the back can't hear. Is the mic picking up okay? So maybe you just need to talk a little louder.
Yeah, sorry, I have an awful voice, but it's
Pull the
crackly.
mic closer to you.
Okay. But street lighting impacts all of those roles. So I am not saying I represent all of the people who do all of those things. But I do have an interest, so that's why I'm here. I have a background page, and then I have an interim response to the Sternberg street lighting plan. It's a quick look of that plan. And then I've got a notional alternate street lighting concept that I'll show you tonight. And I've got a picture of the Christmas tree lighting a week ago, so that was pretty cool. Alternate street lighting, very nice. So this background is kind of for reference, but back in August, on August 11th, I was ignorant about street lighting, and I didn't know that I was going to embark on this path. On August 12th, a sign appeared at the dentist across the street from me and said that they were going to ask for a variance from on-site parking requirements. So August 23rd, I went to the Planning Commission and learned that the Public Services Department added requirements to that construction project. And they included widening the sidewalks and adding 4 streetlights across the street from my house. Not just streetlights, but Sternberg acorn fixtures, and that they would be installed at the property owner's expense. So on September 7th, I made a presentation here, and one of the findings from that was that the city exempts itself from its own lighting code, which is pretty decent, for these Sternbergs. So on November, I got the city engineer's letter in response to those issues, and they reduced the Sternberg acorn fixtures from 4 to 3, and offered, though, said that there's an alternative. Council could direct the Public Services Department to stop using Sternbergs and consider different streetlights for downtown, and that's what I'm trying to work on and encourage. On November 16th, I mentioned that I thought it would be a good criteria to differentiate street lighting in residential areas from downtown commercial areas. So I haven't been able to do any kind of high-level trade study. I'll try to do something like that next year. And at the bottom, I would like to iterate that with the Public Services Department before coming here. And I wanted to mention, I don't know the process, and I apologize to you all for learning kind of in the process. And I appreciate, again, your time listening to these kind of stepwise pieces of my acquiring knowledge about this. I defer to the city for the real research and for the decisions in this. So, but my objective is to provide information that would help us build a consensus to make a change to the lighting plan for downtown. So I do have an interim concern in that some Sternbergs are going in now. I just want to mention that. And also that there's not many Sternbergs installed north of Main, so now is the time to change this plan if we're going to do it. I also want to mention that there's a process over time of gathering input from my downtown neighbors. I'll tell you, I might not be here tonight if I hadn't gotten support. However, I didn't ask any of those folks to come tonight because this is just an interim step. There are concerns about both future overlighting but also current underlighting. Both of those probably ought to be addressed. And last night, the Planning Commission accepted feedback from the R5 residents, which included input about lighting. So this response now is just a quick look at the Sternberg street lighting plan for downtown Littleton, north of Main only. And then I've got a notional alternate street lighting concept for rough cost sizing. And I'll just mention that actually Mr. Brown, Planning Commissioner, pointed out to me that item 8A, the amendment to the 2010 budget, includes an almost 15% overrun in the street lighting budget, which is $1 million. It's worth it to look at this area. So in terms of cost impact. So on the right is a blow-up of the downtown area of the Sternberg street lighting plan, and I'll note that I kind of put that in quotes because the whole plan would probably have objectives, requirements, specifications, assumptions, usage figures, stuff like that. I have a layout, but again, I can do something with that. It shows approximately 330 new fixtures north of Main. I think that the yellow dots are proposed Sternberg acorn fixtures. I'm assuming that the existing Cobra heads would be removed because that would duplicate the lighting. So I did a back of the envelope rough cost impact. For initial acquisition, if each fixture cost $1,000, which is probably low, that's $330. Even if it's spread out, that's a lot of money. The installation cost is substantial, and I don't know what that is. A lot of considerations about it. And that's the raw cost. I'm assuming that usually when institutions cost things, there are overhead and G&A expenses added on to administer that expense. So it's a partial number, but there it is. And then for operations and maintenance, currently Excel charges a flat rate of $11 a month per fixture, 330 fixtures, $3,600 a month, $44,000 a year. And again, that's unburdened, so the actual expense to the city is going to be higher. And at the bottom, I've got a couple reminder pictures of what a Sternberg fixture is. There's a single post. The acorn fixture is on top. It, in operation, at night sprays light everywhere, upwards and sideways. And it's commonly used in large public areas to illuminate buildings, surrounding areas. Not commonly used, I think, in residential areas. So a notional alternate, I took a map and put in some little yellow things to indicate where lighting might be. It's got approximately 50 new fixtures, and again, I'm assuming the removal of the existing Cobra heads. The objective is illumination for both traffic and pedestrians. The rough cost, if each fixture costs $2,000, which is probably high, that's $100K. And again, I don't know installation, but it's probably less than the Sternberg plan because every time you plant one of these in the on the surface, you have to do all this mounting stuff, so it's going to be less. And again, it's unburdened. And then for ops and maintenance at the flat rate, it's $6,600 a year. So coarsely, it's $200,000 less just for initial acquisition, and $37,000 unburdened in annual savings. And this is just downtown lighting in a few blocks. So I made some assumptions, similar height as the existing fixtures, but it's necessary to fill in the places where the sidewalks are not illuminated. I want to be responsive to my neighbors who have concerns about that. I also used I've talked to a couple city lighting folks. I've talked to the Sternberg rep. I've talked to an independent contractor. And I've done some research online, and I've used typical residential street lighting criteria. So you illuminate in residential areas, you illuminate roadway beacons for drivers. You don't illuminate the roadway because that's what headlights do. This is not a high-speed area like Santa Fe, so you don't illuminate the roadway. And I've assumed full cutoff luminaires to minimize glare. Glare into the driver's vision is a potential liability risk for the city, and it should be minimized. This is the standard of practice now, and it's, I think, a fundamental goal that the city should consider. And then glare into homes is typically not desired by residents, and that's, a personal thing that I don't want to see as glare into my home. Also, it's important to provide uniformity of light coverage, which means you don't have constant lumens everywhere, but there's predictable spacing, and there's adequate lumens in the areas between lamps for pedestrian safety. And I've got a couple examples of Sternberg full cutoff luminaires down there. So there's a bunch of issues to explore and consider, yes, mostly by engineers, which is why I don't want to keep coming to you folks with this data unless you want it. I'll probably send you some email, and then I'll be talking to the public services folks. But installation is a concern. And color rendering index now, this is a issue that's very current in the lighting community, and it has to do with providing what's called limited spectrum light, which is what high pressure sodium is, which is what the Sternbergs are now, versus full spectrum. And when you go out in the parking lot, you'll see, it's very interesting to me, the parking lot has many examples of lighting fixtures in it. So over to the right, you will see metal halide, full cutoff fixtures in the way that they illuminate. Over on the left, you'll see some high-pressure sodium, which are kind of yellowish, that yellowish peach color. And human eyes see much better with the full-spectrum light. So it's considered safer now. And even though it costs a little bit more to maintain, the trade-off is increased safety and performance, increased seeing. And the point of streetlights is to see. So if there's a small expense to see better, that's actually considered now worth it to do by engineers in the lighting community. So, yeah, check out the lights in the parking lot for examples. Now, it's worth mentioning, and you folks probably already know, that Excel energy fixtures and costing are in transition. I really admire Littleton for what it's doing in concert with other cities to negotiate with Excel. There are issues with the rate, also the base cost, and the fixture choices. And Excel recently has reduced its fixture choices to, they say, reduce maintenance burden. So far there are no LED choices, and they discourage metal halide. You could say, though, that's not going to persist. In a couple of years, Excel will have these choices. And it's worth mentioning that some cities now are studying not using Excel at all for streetlight maintenance. There's reasons for that, and that may be a direction that cities take. It's also worth mentioning that the street lighting industry is in flux because new technology is in development, not mature. So LED features are hugely efficient, much better than anything we have now. They have features that introduce challenges like dimming. That's great because you can control people's behavior. I don't mean that in a manipulative sense, but just to help people be noisy in public places, but then quieter in residential places, which I think is a great use for our downtown. But it probably impacts spacing and things like that. And the cost of energy is only going to increase, so there's motivation to go for this kind of cost efficiency in LED. In addition, the performance criteria by lighting designers are changing and evolving, like this issue of limited spectrum lighting versus full spectrum light. So standards are being updated. And you could say that in a plan, you would want to consider retrofit or replacement of existing Sternberg acorns at some point in the future. I've got a picture of Paul Mitchell. He's a Sternberg rep. He was here for the National League of Cities Congress last week, and he invited me down to see him. He's standing next to an LED acorn, and that would be retrofittable on the posts that we have. I'm not necessarily advocating that, but Sternberg would love to do it. And over on the right, I've got a couple examples, more examples of Sternberg downlighting projects. They have posts that are called candy canes. They direct the light downward, and they're full cutoff. So they do their best to minimize glare and direct the light where it's needed on the traffic beacons and the sidewalks, but not onto buildings or houses on the side, and not upward into the sky where some of us would like to watch satellites and stars. So that's all I had to present, and I'm not sure what my time is, but if anyone has feedback, I'd be interested to hear it.
Thank you, Pam.
Okay.
Questions? Okay, thank you. Next is Judy Hinton regarding the red light cameras.
Try not to cry this time. Last time I was here, I asked.
Could you state your name and address and
Oh, sure.
talking to the
Judy
microphone?
Hinton, 5476 Morning Glory,
Okay.
Littleton. I was here probably a year ago asking for you to look into having a red light indicator at Platte Canyon and Bowles. You were to get back to me, and no one ever has. So my grandson was rear-ended down there a few months ago, and I decided it's time to come back and ask you. The intersection is chaos, and if any one of you have ever gone through it in the morning or in the evening, I mean, there are people constantly running red lights. And I've noticed that the ones where you have red light indicators, they're much better. That traffic seems, they don't run red lights like they used to. So this is a small intersection, and something needs to be done because it gets worse and worse. So that's why I'm here. Has anybody ever looked into it?
Well, thank you, Judy, for coming down. When the city was looking at installing the red light technology, they analyzed the intersections to find out which intersections had the worst incidence of accidents that needed this the most. And that's why they're installed at the locations that they're installed at. So we can get you traffic accident information for that particular intersection. And sometimes what the data shows is a little different than what people's perceptions might be because they have a relative that gets in an accident or issues like that.
But I've seen people run, weekly I see people running red lights. They come down that hill and they go over as fast as they can. And I mean, somebody needs to really look at it.
Okay.
You know, because I don't see why, supposedly it doesn't cost you any money to put those in, does it?
No, it doesn't cost us any money to put it in.
Why can't you look at that and see if it would help? I mean, you go over there and see if you'd like to be driving through that traffic.
I drive through that intersection.
Do you?
Yes.
Do you think it's good?
I actually don't think it's much worse than any of the other intersections that we have, but that's my perception.
Okay.
We'll have the public.
Mayor, let me just add just a footnote since Judy came down here, just a little more education. Your response that it doesn't cost us anything is partially correct, but the way the system works is that the vendor analyzes these, and the vendor's going to have a baseline cost if they think that and they've got a whole model to do this, if they think it will warrant it and it will pay for itself, then those are the intersections that the mayor is talking about that we've brought to council. I think, I'm trying to recall, but I thought Commander Christensen, or Charlie, do you know if we sent a recent analysis? Okay. But let me just check. It's not quite just free and easy is what I'm trying to tell you. But I think in response to Mrs. Hinton, let me double check with Commander Christensen, because if council, if you might recall, when you authorized the first three, we did say that we would continue to look at some other intersections, because Mrs. Hinton's not the only person that's approached us about installing these. And I know Mr. Cernanic's been interested on the east side of town, a couple of intersections at for example, Mineral and Broadway that are very heavily impacted. But let me just double check and maybe refresh council's memory about what that trigger threshold is. So there's sort of two gates there. One is, does council want to do it? Secondly, does the vendor think that because it is fairly expensive to set those up, does the vendor think it will pay for itself?
Well, I just appreciate an answer because
Sure.
to me, it looks like it needs one.
Yeah, I understand. Okay.
Well, and to be more specific, we actually lease the system, for lack of a better word. It costs us a certain amount per month per approach that's done, and I seem to remember it's $4,000 per month per approach.
Yeah, I
But
don't
I'm not
remember,
sure if
but
that's-
I wanted to, it was while she was here, there is sort of a bottom threshold that makes it financially feasible, but.
And enforcement. There's a threshold at which enforcement becomes, frankly.
But let me check and see the traffic, if we've actually asked them to evaluate that intersection.
And doesn't your income go down as people start watching it or not?
Pardon?
Does the income go down on one as you stop watching?
You know, that's a good question, and actually that seems to be, we sort of modeled it. Greenwood Village has had them about 4 years, and the practice seems to be that it's a lot of citations the first year, and then it drops off rather dramatically as people get used to it, and then it kind of levels out. So we're barely just through our first year, but we think that's going to be the pattern. And then actually, one of the things that I don't think we've brought it back to council is if one intersection stabilizes to a more acceptable level, then we may be able to move that leased equipment that the mayor talked about to another intersection and maybe, kind of move it around and get a little bit more bang for the buck. But, yeah, that's the whole idea, is to change behaviors. Right. And I think Greenwood's had its best results, I think, at Arapahoe and Quebec, which was just off the charts for them, and they've seen a dramatic change in behavior stabilization there at that intersection. So that's kind of the ultimate goal. But
we keep accident information for all the intersections and, factly, all the stretches of road. We'll get you that information for that intersection and comparisons for other intersections.
I'd like to know.
Okay.
But I do see people running red lights there all the time, and I think if you could do something to protect people,
yeah.
Good to look at.
We've got your address, so we'll get you that information in the next week or so.
Judy?
I'll be back.
Is Joey okay?
Joey was fine. The bad part was he's 16. We left him at home by himself. And his mom and dad and I took his sister to Marquette. He had no one to call. But he wasn't hurt.
Oh, that's
so
good.
That was good.
That's good.
No, but I appreciate it if you look into it.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we get, for the last 5 years, I don't know if top 20 intersections
do we have 5 years?
with the, because one of the things I'm curious about, the most recent data we received just from the police department listed just for the last year. Then I asked Charlie Bloston, would he provide us some additional information? Because what happens if something goes down, a couple of accidents or a couple of violations, whatever, in 1 year, you want to see is what happened really in the pattern of several years, because there are always fluctuations.
And there's all kinds of factors. I can't remember the last time Charlie or any of the traffic people actually came in and briefed council on that, but a lot of variables impact those figures. For example, winter weather.
Right.
If in a very dry, mild winter like we're having now, we'll tend to see a fairly dramatic drop. Whereas if like a couple of years ago where we had some very severe icing storms and so forth, you'll see spikes. So there's a lot of different variables that impact that accident data. But I'm just looking back. Charlie's nodding his head. He says we can recoup 5 years of data. So we'll pull that together for you and send that out to council.
Something else that I had in my head, I suspect some people now try to avoid where the red light intersections are, and so is there some more exciting behavior going on someplace else? So
people dodging the red light, say, I don't know. Like we could take a look at
it's better just not to go through the red light.
Just a quick comment on our list of items that have some action coming, the chart that's being done. Perhaps we could include when a citizen comes down and has a comment, is expecting a response. It seems like she may have fallen through the cracks, didn't get a response back
Sure.
from us.
follow-up
Traditionally, we're
list.
pretty good at doing that, but
Yeah.
maybe that'll just help keep us all reminded. Thanks.
Yep. Good thought.
That brings us to unscheduled public appearances, which is a time anyone can come down and address us on. Mr. Randall.
Good evening. I'm Jack Randall, Littleton, Colorado. Two things about the lighting come to mind. I was here in council when Pat Cronenberger proposed and got the residential and commercial lighting standards passed, which were designed to reduce light pollution. I maintain that the Sternberg lights in the proper place produce that for a good reason, and I think that putting them in the wrong place, which would be Curtis down there, would be the wrong place to introduce light pollution, because if those same lights were to be moved back entirely on the dentist property, they wouldn't fit the code. So I think that her presentation of an alternative should be considered, which brings up the second point that you're going to see on 8A coming up, when they're asking for $125,000 additional because the street lighting cost repairs and maintenance have been higher than estimated. So I think it might make sense to take a look at the study she's done and factor it in if it would in fact cut costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. But I think one of the things that's worth pointing out is something that was in Pam's presentation, and that is we get charged a flat rate by Excel per street light per month, regardless of the bulb that's in the light or which direction it's shining or anything else like that. So if the lighting costs have gone up, that's because Excel has changed the cost that they charge us on a flat rate per light, or we have a whole bunch of people crashing into light poles, and we have to replace the light poles.
I think that's great, and I would make it clear that I am under no circumstances here as a spokesman for Excel.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
could I ask if Mr. Pat Durkin is in the audience? Would you come up to the mic, please? He wanted to come and address council, and I advised him that we did have unscheduled public appearance.
Okay.
My name's Pat Durkin. I live on South Washington Street, right behind Littleton High School. And my concern is the traffic and the parking on our street. During the day, we get between 30 and 35 cars parked, mostly from Ralph Shop employees. And they come as early as 5:30 in the morning, and a lot of them have really loud mufflers, and it's just disrupting to the neighborhood. And then, of course, during the school year, during events, we get parking both sides, and it's not a wide street. So it's reduced sometimes to 9 foot or less to try and get through there one lane. And my concern is if an emergency vehicle ever had to go down there, they'd never make it. I broached this with the fire department, and they said, well, we'll just take our machine and run it down there and move the cars. And I just don't see that taking a $250,000 piece of machinery and pushing $40,000 cars off the side of the road in case there was a fire or some sort of an emergency in that area. Every other school in Littleton, residential streets around there have limited parking by permit, hourly, something like that, and this is the only one that doesn't. So, you know, I've talked to my neighbors, and, you know, it's just getting worse and worse and worse as the years go on. I've lived there about 25 years. So I don't know where to start. You know, I don't know if a petition or...
Pat, Charlie will get in touch with you about Charlie Bloston. He's in charge of our Public Services Department. And as you pointed out, certain neighborhoods have permit-only parking because they have different types of parking issues related to that. So Charlie will get in touch with you, or you can get his card and talk to you about possibly implementing that or some other solution for your neighborhood.
Yeah, would he?
You call me, we'll help you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how much we're going to get heat back from Littleton because they really use that as an overflow on their, you know, their events there. Because they don't have enough.
Yeah, Mr. Durkin, what he's talking about is there's a special challenge for that area because of the stadium. And so I think that neighborhood it does have some challenges that perhaps certainly Arapahoe High doesn't have, but Heritage probably doesn't have the same.
Well, but his complaint was Ralph Schomp employees during the day, which is a little different than stadium events on the weekend.
That is,
or the
yes, sir,
night,
but
so-
he was also talking about the event parking
Yeah, you're right.
when they have something at the stadium, so,
And that's a real concern, too. That really, because nobody parks uniform.
yes, sir.
You get some 3 foot out in the road, some 4 foot, and so you got this, obstacle course to navigate back to your
Sure.
house.
It's a real challenge, for sure.
And when Ralph Schomp first went in there, they guaranteed that they would not take test drives on the street or impact the street whatsoever. And I've called them and they said, well, we can't make our employees take the shuttle because they do have a shuttle that they take and, so there's not really a lack of parking on their part.
Sure. Okay, we'll follow up, you bet.
One of the problems that we have at Littleton High School is the fact that it's a stadium for 3 high schools.
Yes, sir.
So you've got different dates on weekends where Arapahoe might be playing another team. Heritage High
Football,
School,
soccer, and they
soccer,
also
you got it all.
host like a huge competitive band event, so that stadium is very heavily used.
Very heavily.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Bruce?
Thank you.
Jim, this is an idea that just popped into my head from the graduation ceremonies that were held over there. Given the crush of people that were in the stadium, they ended up, I don't know if it was a contract or what they did, but they had people parking over at roughly that Kmart at Bellevue and Broadway and then running a bus back.
We've worked with the district people, and there are things like at graduation when they know with parents and relatives and everything that it's just going to be huge. So there have been logistical addresses to that.
Well, it might make, hypothetically, if the kids were going to pay a permit to use that Kmart lot and they ran a bus back and forth, maybe Kmart makes a little bit of money, maybe it provides overflow parking, maybe it keeps them out of the neighborhood absent
We could
permit
certainly
or something.
explore that with LPS.
Just a thought.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Mr. DeVos?
Good evening, Council. My name is Jim DuBose. I live in District 4. I have 2 subjects, one on the red light monitoring system and one on calendars. I take Prince Street south to Jackass Hill, down the hill and turn west on Mineral, go to that stoplight at Santa Fe, and turn south. I do this 5 to 10 times a week. That light system has been installed for about a year. 5 times a week would be 250 occurrences. 10 times a week would be 500. So I go through that intersection very, very frequently, and I'm scared to death of that damn red light system you got. So I never get caught by the light, but I'm often right up there at the white line, ready to turn left when some other guy turns on Santa Fe through the red, and I've never seen that camera go off. The one that should go off when somebody illegally turns from West Mineral to South Santa Fe. Never have seen it. Somewhere between 500 and 1,000 times I've been there.
Westbound
Last
Mineral
year.
to South Santa Fe.
Yeah.
Well, north on South Santa Fe.
Huh?
You're making that left-hand turn from going west on Mineral to turning left, but it's South Santa Fe Drive, but it's going north on Santa Fe.
No, going south on Santa Fe.
So eastbound Mineral turning south?
Now you really got them screwed up, Jim.
Let's do it this way. I'm going down Jackass Hill. I hit Mineral and I turn right. Now I'm going west, right, Phil?
Yeah, but then when
I
you,
stop at Santa Fe because the light's red.
And then you turn left.
I turn left or south on Santa Fe.
Okay.
Are you a left-right guy or a north-south
Okay,
guy?
I got it. I know where you're going.
And so you're talking about cars ahead of you doing the same direction you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have that checked into.
Jim, are you doing this during the daylight hours?
Yes, I am, usually.
Okay, what they've told us before is if it's during daylight, the light doesn't flash if it doesn't need to flash, if there's enough light to take a picture without the flash.
Oh, I've been through there on cloudy days, I'm sure.
Okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Just thought I'd mention it. Now to the calendar. I have a son who made a mistake. He fell in love and married a girl in Massachusetts. And he admits his mistake, and he misses Littleton. And talking to his wife about it is beyond the pale, of course. So last week, he called me on the phone, and he said, Dad, have they put that Littleton calendar out yet? And I said, yeah, I think so. I'll check and see. And he said, well, when it comes out, send me one so I can show all these people around here where I came from. I think that's a pretty good endorsement for your calendar. And I do hope you do it again next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and you can pick one up from the pile that's right there. Anyone else? All right, that brings us to consent agenda items, which are items that are generally non-controversial and we can adopt with a motion. First one is a motion to approve the use of Laddie Street for the Soapbox Derby. Soapbox Derby has been running for a number of years on Laddie. They're proposing to close Laddie on Saturday and Sunday, June 4th and 5th of 2011 from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. to run their Soapbox Derby. Those of you familiar with Laddie know that that's an ideal location to do it because it has a nice downhill slope on it. This motion would approve the closure of Laddie for that time period. 7B is an ordinance on first reading of the city code.
This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending Section 3-16-5 of the City Code pertaining to building contractor licensing and registration.
And basically, we used to test contractors ourselves. The proposed change to the ordinance would accept testing that's been done by other entities in order to license contractors in the City of Littleton. 7C is also an ordinance amending City Code.
This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending the provisions for carbon monoxide alarms in the 2009 International Residential Code.
And the purpose of this is the 2009 International Residential Code that we have adopted has a requirement that we do an inspection for carbon monoxide alarms when we do any kind of inspection on a property. The problem that we have is we do some inspections where we don't enter the house at all. And this would amend the code to take out the requirement to inspect for carbon monoxide alarms if we're not going into the dwelling units.
Could I ask that be pulled, please?
And that's pulled.
And
So,
just a footnote, Mayor, the public hearing on 7B will be December 21st.
thank you very much. So how about a motion, please, for the consent agenda?
I move for the adoption of consent agenda A and B.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. Any discussion? Items 7A and B. Phil? Thank you. Certainly. Jose, do you want to consent with us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
All right. 7C then. Jim?
Well, I'm wondering if we could ask about some sort of an attachment to the permits for all the exterior exceptions that would suggest that the installation of an alarm with would be beneficial to the homeowner, and have a request attached to that they voluntarily ask for the inspection with no cost to the homeowner for doing the inspection. It's just a curiosity, I think it could be attached to the
Our
permit.
chief building official is here. Mr. Thielen, would you like to address Councilman Taylor's question, please?
Good evening, Council. What we have proposed is that I have an article ready for the Littleton Independent that will go over some of the things that you're addressing right now as far as encouraging people to install carbon monoxide detectors even when you don't have a building permit, just for your own safety. And the do's and don'ts of, when you, like you don't heat your home with your oven door open up, or you don't start your vehicle in your garage. Those are all sources of carbon monoxide. So I prepared an article that'll be in next month's Littleton report. We also have a handout that is attached to every permit talking about the importance of carbon monoxide alarms. So we're trying to cover our bases, telling people the importance of these devices. But at the same time, what that ordinance does is give us the ability to verify those alarms are installed once we can get inside the home. I wish there was more we could do to encourage that people install these alarms, but through a building permit process for exterior projects, we just can't enforce it.
For the second hearing, could you provide us a copy of that letter that goes out with the permit?
I'd be happy to.
I really think we need to make that as strong as possible, and I'd like to see the letter.
I agree.
Any other questions?
I move for the adoption of 7C and the consent agenda.
Second.
And that sets a public hearing schedule for December 21st, and that the ordinance be published in full. So, discussion? Council ready to vote?
Vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay, that brings us to item 8A, which is an ordinance on second reading, amending the budget. Oh, this is what everyone's been waiting for.
This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending ordinance number 27, series of 2009, known as the Annual Appropriation Bill for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Jefferson, and Douglas, State of Colorado, for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2010, and ending December 31, 2010.
Council Finance Director Doug Farman will present this item to you.
Good evening. This is our annual appropriations ordinance where we ask council to increase the appropriations for us to stay within our legal restrictions for the year. And we usually do this in December. This year we have two funds that we'd like to ask council to amend the budget. One is the general fund, and there are two items within the general fund. One has to do with our fire services contract with Littleton Fire Protection District and the Highlands Ranch Metro District, and that would be to expand the program regarding Medic 16 services by $275,000, and these are reimbursable costs that the two districts will pay the city. The other item is a street lighting item of $125,000 for additional repairs and maintenance costs that we did not anticipate at the beginning of the year. And there's a small typo there on the heading. It should be $125,000, not $150,000, but the correct amount is in the ordinance. So we ask council to increase the appropriations for the general fund by $400,000. The other fund is the grants fund, and this would be expanding and funding programs, various grant programs that we've received grant monies for, and that would be $2,577,540.
Questions for Mr. Furman? Bruce?
Just, I guess, Doug, as a follow-up to the street lighting, the anticipated street lighting cost, repairs, and maintenance principally is reflective of what events? Is it Excel related? Is it changing out things? Is it more people running into more poles? What's prompting the increase?
I think it's all of those different issues. There have been more people damaging the poles, and we do try to get reimbursed by insurance companies on those incidents. But there have been higher Excel costs. There have been some utility adjustment costs that Excel passes on basically to the city, to their customers. We've tried to reduce the costs as much as possible, but we're basically locked into a lot of those costs and what we can do for street lighting. So Charlie Blossom can maybe expand on that if he has more details or information on that.
Council, we have had more damage to streetlights this year than probably any other year, and those costs have gone up. And we also have a rate increase for every light, from the high-intensity ones on Santa Fe Drive to the lower-intensity ones in residential neighborhoods. And I think Council's aware that we are involved in discussions with Xcel Energy through a coalition of cities in Colorado that have challenged the tariffs that they charge us for streetlights, and the potential for us to take over ownership of the lights and look at less expensive ways of managing them than Xcel Energy does. The best example I can give you is the maintenance and repair, changing light bulbs. Every time a bulb burns out on a street light, we are charged by Xcel to repair it. There are private contractors that can do that at less cost. But we can't have a private contractor change a light bulb on a street light that is right now managed by Xcel Energy. If we are successful in this plan, which has taken a couple of years now and may take another year to conclude, that we might be able to own street lights, then we can hire contractors or do it ourselves to change the light bulbs at a lot cheaper rate than Xcel Energy charges us. So we're looking at all those avenues to bring our costs down. One thing I cannot control in all that is when errant drivers or pedestrians damage the street lights, we have to repair them. Just, I think it was last week, we caught a pedestrian, two of them, who decided in their intimate wisdom to take one of the Sternberg lights at Prince Street in Maine and just knock it over in the middle of the night. Thankfully, a good citizen saw it, reported it, and followed the two offenders until the police department was able to catch up with them, and we will be charging them for the repair of that light. They're in for quite a shock because they're not cheap. So we are looking at all those possibilities.
Questions, Jim?
Charlie, you might want to consult with your cohort in the city of Boulder about how they're handling some of their Excel problems that they're doing.
They're on the committee, Councilman. Yeah, we meet with them.
Yeah.
But you may
And
not
matter of
want to
fact,
put a
next
smart
week we
grid
have a
in.
conference call with the whole group to discuss all those kind of things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Deb?
Charlie, what's our budget for this for 2011?
I think it was 900,000.
I think it's $1
No,
million.
we bumped it.
900. $1 million?
Yeah, Tiffany Hooten, I'm pretty sure we bumped it
$1
to
million.
Yeah,
I think I
because
looked
we
that
were
up,
running
and it's,
short.
yeah, over $1 million.
So
We'll double check that, Councilwoman, but I'm pretty sure that we bumped it up to make sure that we had sufficient budget authority for 2011.
because we're already at $1,025,000 this year. So if it's just at $1 million, I mean, we may want to take another look at that.
Yeah, we'll monitor that very closely.
Other questions? Phil?
Doug, to make sure that my understanding is straight on this, we're looking for a $2.9 million increase around the appropriations. Of that, there's a portion that's reimbursable from our partners in fire protection. There's a portion that really is just allowing for grants to flow through, and the only truly negative variance, if we wanted to say, or adverse variance, is the $125,000 for the lighting, and everything else is there, and essentially we've had a pretty good discussion of where that $125,000
That is accurate, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you for illuminating us, Charlie. This is a public hearing. If anyone wants to come down and address us on this issue, they can. Now would be the time. Okay. Jim, you want to give us a motion?
I move to approve the ordinance on second reading, amending the 2010 budget.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance amending the 2010 budget. Discussion?
Don't we have to first close the public hearing?
Actually,
You already asked for,
we already asked for input, but
But he opened it, but then he
Oh.
didn't close it.
Motion. And I didn't read it.
Yeah, but the motion, but Jim
well,
didn't read
it'll
it
be
that
closed
way.
when we dispose of this item and go on to the next thing, so.
I didn't read the motion that you printed. I just made it up.
shame on
Any other discussion? Bruce?
No, sorry. Sure.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
All right. 9A, a motion to approve a consented agreement for the allocation of storage space.
Council, this is an item that I'm not sure this council has dealt with. I think we've, from time to time, in talking about issues on the South Platte River, we've mentioned the Chatfield reallocation project. In the memo that I sent you, I gave you a little bit of background. Initiated almost 16 years ago, a coalition of many water providers, the state of Colorado, and other agencies to approach the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to expand Chatfield Reservoir. Chatfield Reservoir is exclusively a flood control reservoir at this point in time. In this proposal, there would be water storage availability in Chatfield of some 20,000 acre feet. And Littleton has been involved in this. The city has been involved with this, not because the city, particularly because we get served by Denver, and so the water storage of it was not of interest to us, but the operation of the reservoir and the idea that if there were more frequent or more scheduled releases, that could help the stream flow, the fish flow, and the habitat in the South Platte River. I think council knows that we've obtained some stream flow rights, but without actually water in the river, those stream flow rights don't have a lot of effect. So we've had an interest more from the environmental aspect of it and the possible positive benefits to our stretch of the river, not necessarily just the water storage. In 2005, a coalition of upstream, what's called upstream users. These are mainly people in Douglas County that are interested in the water supply, and downstream users of which, even though their Denver Water Board is very heavily involved because they have some very senior stream rights, and the Greenway Foundation. Many of you, I think, have met Mr. Shoemaker, Jeff Shoemaker with the Greenway Foundation, and put together a cooperative. And the whole idea was to work with the water agencies that were interested in storage, but have some mutual cooperation that if this can finally, and as I said in my memo, we've been at it for 16 years. I don't know how much longer it'll go, but if it ever gets approved by the Corps of Engineers, then we wanted to have these agreements in place that would be this cooperation in terms of operating those stream flows to the maximum environmental benefit of the river. In a couple of months ago, I received a communication from an attorney for the city of Brighton. Brighton had enrolled earlier as one of the water storage participants, They were interested in acquiring a little over 1,400 acre-feet of storage. And after a certain number of years, the City Council in Brighton has determined that they don't want to participate in the project any longer. So they have offered their 1,400 acre-feet for sale to other participants. And three Douglas County water agencies have agreed to purchase this share in this project. Part of the MOU, though, requires for a sale to happen a waiver, a consent agreement to allow this sale to occur. We had conversations, City Attorney, Ms. Starrett, myself, and Kirsten Crawford talked with our water attorney, Sarah Irby, in evaluating this. We don't believe that this sale would have any negative impacts on the potential impact on or upside for the South Platte. So we would recommend approval to you. But if you've got any questions about approving this, both Suzanne or I would attempt to answer those.
Questions?
Jim, certainly given how the city receives its water now, as you mentioned, our concern is not about the storage that occurs here, but the operation. With this, if the sale comes from Brighton, which is at one end of the metro area, to entities that are now at the south end, that would essentially be upstream, correct, if I'm correct in my direction.
That's correct.
From the reservoir. In that movement of sale from an entity that would be downstream to entities that are now upstream, what are some of the situations or not that would impact the potential where they might say, hold the water there, where the Corps or others that determine the flow from the right. Dam or the reservoir would maybe be at odds?
Yeah, and that's a good question. In fact, I noted here that was our initial concern, was that the entities above the reservoir were buying the water where Brighton was below the reservoir. But in talking with Mr. Shoemaker, and I didn't go into, there's a much larger piece of this, and it has to do with for them to have any hope of having approval by the EPA or the State of Colorado Parks Service or the Corps of Engineers, there's going to have to be a significant amount of environmental mitigation for expanding that reservoir. Some of you who may have followed this, but in the initial scoping, if they raise that reservoir, they're going to have to raise the dam. If they increase that pool by 20,000 acre feet, they're going to have to move boat ramps, beaches, all kinds of things. The negotiations that are going on is for them to be able to mitigate those negative environmental uses. They'll have to get credit for doing something else. And so the negotiations that Mr. Shoemaker and the downstream coalition are involved in really kind of involves the EPA and the fact that they may need to release that water at certain times of the year. For example, the winter flows for fish habitat are very important to us. At some times of the year, that stream flow through the South Platte may be down around 10 CFS. And so I think what the negotiation is, Mr. Cernanek, is we're anticipating they will have to make efforts to regulate those flows even when they may not necessarily want to get that, to meet the mitigation threshold for EPA.
Well, given that our interest is that those potential mitigation items are important, do we have to make this agreement or step out at this point in time as opposed to saying, possibly waiting to see that there is indeed mitigation that is going to allow for a more even flow across the seasons?
Well, yeah, and I'll have to conjecture with you here a little bit, but that's a discussion Mr. Shoemaker and I had. And we talked, the discussion was, and the Greenway Foundation is going to approve this. But the question would be, well, what if we just said, no, let's just sit on it and wait? The likelihood is Brighton's going to drop out anyway, and they're going to discontinue paying their share. So you may have this kind of 1,400 acre feet of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, water looking for an owner.
That usually doesn't have a problem in Colorado.
Well, it usually doesn't, except that if unless there's some, unless somebody wants to get some confidence that EPA or the Corps of Engineers will eventually do that, and the three that are stepping up to the plate are the three that have said they have that confidence. So you've kind of got a conjectural issue. Our recommendation to you is that this is a good faith effort, and maybe I should have had Mr. Shoemaker here tonight, but we're kind of recommending that we approve this that we're all in it together, and we anticipate that those upstream users will continue to make good faith efforts to look at the downstream users. So I can't give you an absolute black and white degree of certainty that that's the way it'll work out, but that's our best estimate.
Yeah, and then
right now the water isn't available in that reservoir.
That's
correct?
right, and may never be. I don't know.
Yeah, might never be.
Yes, sir.
And basically, what Brighton wants to do is sell their water space.
Yes, sir. The right to
nothing
that
to do with
space.
water.
Yes, sir.
Really, unless it's adjudicated that has been declared by the water courts, and if that in fact does happen, it will raise the dam 12 feet.
I think that's accurate. Yes, sir.
So they're going to have to remove a lot of the boat docks and everything and move them up.
Yes, sir. And lots of people are very unhappy about that. So this has a long way to go.
I can see an advantage to that in a way because of the fact that dam has the ability to hold a lot of water, and the only way that a lot of these people are going to get some water for their cities, whatever, or else we're going to stop growing eventually. So I think that would be a good use right now. I don't think it's going to happen very soon. It's all litigation at the present time. But I certainly would. It doesn't bother me to vote for allowing that storage of water to be in there, because maybe they can buy the water rights, but there may not be the water to put in there.
Possibility.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I think the ones who are paying into it right now have done their due diligence with their water rights. So I think most of them are feeling like they will be able to use it, but there's not an absolute guarantee.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Bruce, do you want to?
You'll go after you.
Okay. Suzanne, I think I've got maybe some inclination of the answer to this from what Phil discussed, but this legal document that the attorneys sent over is replete with every sort of assurance and waiver of any potential liability that could conceivably be ascribed to Brighton, including belt and suspender provisions and probably a few other snow pants and the whole 9 yards. Out of curiosity, I mean, it seems like overkill to me. I don't have a major problem with it, but it seems like overkill to have this much of a waiver for something where they're just trying to get out of a storage reservation. Is there something that we're not assuming any liability down the road by excusing them from some liability, but what kind of liability are they getting waived out of that could conceptually occur as a result of this, well, that wouldn't occur as a result of this agreement? hypothetically.
Well, I mean, I suppose hypothetically, it would be any kind of lawsuit about the release of the water, whatever our rights would be, were there to be water stored there, what were our rights against Brighton would be waived by this.
But if Brighton had storage that they're selling, and then whoever buys that releases that, how does Brighton have any liability that for something that the subsequent holders of that storage do down the road, if it ever happens?
Well, they'd get a release from the purchasers of the storage, but they wouldn't yet have a release from the rest of us who are the parties to the entire agreement. So even though the purchaser came in theory, if we don't sign this waiver, we would still have some, whatever hypothetical claim against Brighton.
Brighton would have potential liability, or we could assert liability against Brighton for something?
Right, and then Brighton could point the finger back at whoever bought it and join them in the lawsuit, but this gets them out right away. I mean, functionally, once you're in that litigation mode, it probably doesn't make any difference. This is just a way to not ever get into that litigation mode.
All right.
By having this kind of a waiver signed by all the entities, then the purchaser is also going to be signing a similar waiver, and they're probably going to be signing whatever indemnification they can as permitted by law, that they would also indemnify Brighton against future claims.
So this is the way out of the whole Superfund site, I think, if memory serves.
Right.
All right. Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
This is a comment to something that Phil brought up about the three entities being upstream of the dam. I would strongly suspect that they wouldn't be trying to purchase this if they didn't have some method already in mind and by which they're going to be able to get this water to where they need it. So, and that's frankly their problem and not ours.
Then basically this document will probably put the city of Littleton on record as to when they are going to make releases, et cetera, that would come downstream at certain different times?
Well, that's the idea of this cooperative, this MOU that we talked about, yes, sir. That would be the ultimate goal if we can ever get through the EPA and the Corps of Engineers.
Thank you.
Someone want to make a motion? Jim, go for it.
I move the council president be authorized to execute the consent waiver and release agreement for the assignment of the City of Brighton's Chatfield space allocation to the Centennial Water and Sanitation District, the Castle Pines Metropolitan District, and the Castle Pines North Metropolitan District.
Second.
Bruce, it's been moved and seconded to execute the consent waiver and release agreement. Discussion? Also ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. That brings us to item 9B, which is a discussion on furloughs.
Deputy City Manager Phil Cortese will present this item to the council tonight.
Good evening. After having discussions with council and with staff, we thought we should inform council about the actual how furloughs would be implemented. And I know there was some direction given to council, from council to us, about waiting for certain trigger dates, so to speak. And once we looked at that, we thought it was our responsibility to look ahead and see how that would actually play out as we implement furlough days, if we have to implement furlough days. And after talking to staff and different employees, we thought it would be better planning if we would take 2 furlough days right off at the beginning of the year in order for us to sort of get ahead of the curve, so to speak. A lot of scenarios could play out. Now, if you're optimistic, we may not need those furlough days. If you're a little bit on the cautious side, you may say, well, what if we need to take all 5? How would that play out when you're in the third quarter of the calendar year, and all of a sudden you say, my God, we need to implement some furlough days, and then employees get hit with their last few paychecks at the end of the year pretty hard. So when we talked to generally employees, the unions and stuff, and they said it was better planning for them and for everyone to plan ahead to have 2 furlough days, at least 2 that we know of, and that would put us ahead of the curve. So not only for citizens, for employees, it's just a better planning tool. Now I can go into, you've got the memo, you've seen it. I'd rather just entertain some questions and what your thoughts are.
Deb?
I have a quick one. On the memo, you've got each furlough day would net approximately $75,000, and in budget meetings, you said it would be $100,000.
Right, and that was, again, part of our due diligence. And to be honest, during the budget process, it was an estimate on our part. And when we looked at the numbers, we went with finance and HR. And a lot of it has to do with interfund transfers like with fire. There's certain funds, especially with the partners, we were including the whole amount. And actually, when we looked at it, we said, well, that should not be included. I could probably have Eric explain that a little bit better if you guys need an explanation. But after we massaged the numbers, it wasn't 100,000. It was more like 75. So it was our due diligence. We just scrubbed the numbers some more, and we said that's 100,000 was not correct.
Any other questions for Phil?
I do. So if we thought we might need, well, we talked about needing perhaps 4 furlough days. So five furloughs at 75,000 would be less than the potential 400,000. So are we looking maybe at a 6th furlough day sometime?
Not at this time. Again, I guess looking at some of the numbers that we already see, that we're trying to be optimistic, and we're trying to stay ahead of the curve. If we do need to implement, council's direction was for 5 furlough days. That's what we're sticking to. If we get into a situation where 5 furlough days doesn't get us what we want, we'll go back to the drawing board and figure out how much more we need. Could be furlough days. It could be going back looking at the budget.
Also have concern about putting one of these on Valentine's Day as opposed to a holiday weekend or whatever. And since I got almost no holidays off when I taught, I can't remember whether or not the city staff gets President's Day off.
Well, we originally had February 18th, but then it dawned on us that's council workshop, so we switched it to the 14th. So that's why we switched that.
No. But normally you guys don't get.
We don't get
President's Day, right?
Day off, no.
And in my head, one of the things I thought we had said, if we had to do furloughs, we would try to.
Excuse me, just let me make a correction there. We do get President's Day.
You do?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you would get a Monday off.
It was another test of you guys, and you all sat there and you.
What day of the week is it?
No, we get President's Day off.
Is it Monday? Right?
Yeah.
So the 18th, though, is a Friday. So what that would be is potentially people would have that Monday off, which is why you guys didn't want to put this on the Friday before, because.
No, I think the idea was the Friday before, so they'd have the 4 days.
The whole part of this planning was also when talking to some employees, and they talk about planning ahead. They said it would be more palatable if they had a 4-day weekend. If we're going to take a day and you're going to lose pay, they'd rather have a 4-day. That's why we centered it around
Yeah, so,
holidays.
I mean, because I talked with you about this, my feeling is I would prefer to have us change the workshop if we're making people take a furlough day, particularly if it's one they don't later need to have taken, that they get the longer weekend. if we're putting it there. But if you think employees don't care, then that's something else.
To be honest, the dates, we can flip those around. We thought we were accommodating you because it's February 18th is the workshop, and if we have a furlough day that day, then we wouldn't come to work. So if you guys want to switch it, we can switch it. That's not a big deal.
I think to give the vast audience a bit of background on this, when we were going through the budget, we were trying to get the budgeted expenditures to match the budgeted revenues for the 2011 budget. We ultimately made some various changes and came within, I believe, $200,000 of that happening. But, and the council decided to stop at that point from making any more cuts, to take that $200,000 difference between budgeted expenditures and budgeted revenues and pull that out of reserves. But the council was concerned that if in 2011 the budgeted revenues or the actual revenues did not match what our projection or our budget was for the revenues, then we wanted some way of being able to handle that situation. And the way that we talked about handling that situation was to have review dates once a quarter, review what was happening with the actual revenues compared to what was happening with the budgeted revenues, and if we got concerned, to implement furloughs. What Phil is bringing us is a plan to do 2 furloughs right now, because if we get to the first quarter or perhaps the second quarter and find out that the revenues are down from what we thought they would be, that would leave us less time during the year to spread those furloughs out. My particular problem, and I don't want to do this, because my issue is we decided during the budget that we were not going to implement furloughs unless we got in a situation that needed it. We aren't in that situation yet. So I would rather wait until 2011 and see what happens with the revenues and then make a decision based on where we are at that time of the year, what the amount of money is that we have a concern about, what's in our reserves, and what else is happening, rather than to start implementing furloughs now in 2010 when we've already made the decision that we weren't going to do that in 2011 unless we had a problem. We don't have a problem yet. And
well, Mayor, let me just interject. That's exactly why this is in front of you tonight, because, yes, as Phil said, when we went back and sat down with the HR and all the department heads who have to implement it, then they brought to us, hey, there are some administrative challenges here. If the council, if the policy is your direction is we wait and we deal with the administrative challenges to the best degree that we can, that's what we'll do. But we felt like it was our responsibility after scoping this, particularly with police and fire, to at least make you aware that these implementation issues were out there. So that's really part of why we're here tonight, because council has not heard this discussion and that has not been briefed that there are some administrative challenges to implementing this. But we understand from the tone of your discussions, that's why we're here tonight. You may say the big picture is, and you've already voiced your own personal opinion, is to wait. But we felt like we had our responsibility after scoping this out with all the departments to at least make you aware that these administrative challenges existed.
And I appreciate that. I think it's great that you did that. It's just from my personal viewpoint, when we get to whatever point in the year, and if we decide that we need to do something budget-wise, then at that point in time, whatever administrative issues are related around to the furloughs, we'd have to take into account for implementing furloughs as opposed to doing some other alternative action. So, Jim.
I appreciate the fact that this would give the employees an opportunity to plan ahead for missing pay, whatever the pay periods happen to be. As I recall, our year-to-date last financial report showed that we are running a little bit ahead of what we were a year ago. And then I was at a talk today where the projections were for some economic growth in the state for next year, which means it may be bode well for us. And I guess I'm concerned about doing furlough days for general employees, police and fire as well. And I guess the bottom line would be I'd be willing to take money out of some reserve fund at the end of the year if we have to do that rather than start going with furlough days.
Bruce?
Phil, did you guys, or Eric, did you guys canvass staff, and was there feedback on this plan as far as broad staff?
Well, let me just say, it's not unanimous. Anything like this is not going to be unanimous.
Don't be shocked.
Yeah. And it was a lot of informal discussions. To be honest, a lot of this started with talking to the unions and talking to the police chief and fire chief, and they said it would be, the union reps all said, along with the chief, it would be much better for them to plan ahead and know in advance, especially with fire. Again, this is on the planning. We can make it work in any way you want to do this, but they said if they're going to take vacation days as their furlough days, so if you take a vacation day start and you say we need to take vacation days in June, well, there's 6 months that fire employees have already taken their vacation days. So then we would have to overlap into 2012. That's perfectly, we can do that. I mean, that's like Jim said, it's all part of implementation. We can make that happen. But you can see just on fire, if in June came or May came and you said we need these furlough days, we would be overlapping into 2012 on their vacation days. So only certain employees for that year, so that calendar year, you would not realize the actual savings, especially in fire, until the next year. So the 24/7 employees started, and yes, we did canvass or informally talk to employees. We did not do a citywide search, but the more, I mean, that's what management does. We try to listen, and we say, we need to present this to council, like Jim said, and you guys give us direction. We thought, as far as planning purposes, this was the best way to do it, but we can make it work.
And mechanically, I guess, if this happens as you propose and it's determined that, you say here at the end of the year the council has determined less than 2 furlough days are necessary, say none are necessary, what happens? They just get more money back at the end of the year?
At the end of the year, we would just reimburse their paychecks. That's not a big deal to do.
How do you reimburse somebody's paycheck who hasn't shown up for work?
You just credit them back for the day that we were taken.
So if we say now we're going to implement a furlough day on the 14th of February, and then we decide partway through June that we really didn't need the furlough day, are you suggesting that we would then pay the employees for the day that they didn't come to work?
Yeah. That's taking something away that normally would have been their vacation day.
So they didn't work.
But you took money away from them, so we owe them back if we don't need that furlough day.
Jim?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the library, in order to meet their budget, they've already have 2 furlough days, and you add 2 more of them, I think that's a disservice to citizens.
Excuse me, let me just insert a correction there. The library, we originally talked about 2 furlough days. That is not currently in their 2011 budget. And Tiffany can come, or Doug can come up and speak to that, but I was under the same impression.
It's coming now out of general circulation books purchase, right?
Yes, ma'am. That's the answer.
Say that again, Peggy?
The money instead is coming out of this general circulation new books budget.
That's the correct answer. Thank you. I didn't, because I had that same impression, Mr. Taylor. I had left with that same impression, but that is not the way it finally came about.
Yeah, now she said that, I remember that.
Deb?
Doug, what was the number that we missed our balance, missed the budget by, that we didn't want to have, my head says 300,000. That
I think it's very close to 225,000 was the final number.
225,000.
It was 300 at one of the
It
meetings.
was
and
300
then there was
originally, and
adjustments back
Some
and forth.
adjustments.
yeah.
Tiffany just said it started out at 300, but it ended up being somewhere less than that, around 200, 225.
Yeah. So, council, what's your druthers? Oh, Phil.
Phil, help me understand a couple of items. One is I'm presuming that the proposal here of 2 furlough days would be the first 2 on the list, right? And I might be leaning more towards 1, but help me understand some of this. Because first one would occur actually before the workshop date when we would have our review. It might give us the opportunity of actually being in a position where we can start to really get a better idea as to how much savings there is, because it's still a little bit of an item that's out there that's still a little fuzzy. Second, and I realize because some of the police furlough is a little bit different than that, so there's some timing issues. Second, if we actually did 1, we would have some experience in the logistics of an implementation of a furlough day. That would give us, as far as looking down the list, would give us a lot of opportunity to say, okay, hey, we've done 1, we've seen what it's like, we haven't gone too deep into it, and I applaud the management and staff for coming back and saying, hey, we'd like to be ahead of the curve.
I think, again, this is up for discussion. We thought we owed it to you to tell you what some of the problems might be. We heard from both unions. They said it's better for them to plan ahead, but we certainly can make this work as long as you understand that we may be carrying over some furlough days into 2012 from 2011. So, we'll make it work in any way. But as far as those reasons that I stated in the memo from talking to staff, planning and notice and all that, we can work around it. But if you gave us our, some of us are druthers planning-wise, this would be better, but we'll make it work.
My follow-on, though, is if we just dealt with the first furlough day, which we're talking about a general government furlough on 2/14, police furlough, and the fire furlough don't impact any closures. What are the items that would be closed or reduction in services with that 1 furlough day?
Well, it would be the closure of services would be the city would be shut down, and I think there wouldn't be any, whether it be 1 or 2 or 3 furlough days, it's the same impact, no matter what it is. I think there might be a logistic
Well, that's
problem.
closing the city center.
City center, museum, library.
all the buildings.
The library. So
yeah.
essentially, it's like a Christmas day.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a holiday.
Oh, no.
Deb and then Peg.
I looked at the 225,000, divide that out, that's less than $20,000 a month over a period of a year. It's $18,750. And I guess, the intention of the furloughs was that we had that 225, and how were things going to go through the year? Was that we were going to get deeper than that, or were revenues and expenses and things going to help get us, keep it moving up? And I think that's still where my head is on that. I think that the furloughs bring in a whole different scenario. They're very complicated. They're very difficult to enact, particularly, we've seen the departments already starting to struggle, how the police would execute it, how the fire would execute it. Because we have never done it before, we really don't have an experience with it. Other cities are doing it. I don't know how they're doing it. I guess my I'd almost just say, let's just take furloughs off the table at this point. My objective would be that as we meet in our regular quarterly meetings, we have more of a goal of the keeping in mind where we want to be in terms of not going any deeper than the 225 and seeing how much more we could come up. I'm going to call it $19,000 a month. That's a good month over at Aspen Grove that can take us right out of that. That's maybe some pinching back on some things that you know, a little pinch here and a little pinch there, just in our own spending, that could take care of it. It seems like that's more palatable to me than to do a massive shutdown for $75,000. Almost seems like the work it would take to do it would mitigate the savings we would make. I think Doug's going to have to work some late nights figuring all of it out. So at this point, that's my feeling, is that I just as soon go ahead and take the furloughs off the table at this point, and let's just keep visiting in the quarterly.
I think that makes sense. Again, the idea was that the more we got into this, it is a little bit more labor intensive than what we thought in planning it out if we take furlough days. Most cities, what makes it palatable for most cities, they know right off the bat, we are taking X, Y, and they just do it, and that's it. What we added, which was a different twist, was that we were going to evaluate it after each quarter, which makes it a little bit more cumbersome. But like I said, this was our best effort to tell you, hey, if we do this, and also going from 100,000 to 75,000, that's a bit of a jump. So, we're comfortable if you all agreed, like I said, to not do the 2 furlough days, but we owed it to you to say this is how it would look if we implement it. And again, the unions up front both said it would be better for them to know in advance, but we can make it work.
Peggy?
Well, I think we're in a little better shape than the cities that have already said we're going to take 5, 10, however many days they're going to take. I mean, the staff, and particularly staff and council, worked hard to trim that budget down, and we are, knock on wood, we seem to be holding our own. We had said, as Phil alluded to, that we'd be looking at the first quarterly report at our workshop. That still would, if things are not as rosy, would allow us to do a furlough day in March. But I'm pretty much want to take these off the table too. But I would say that since we now know that the figure that we would save is roughly 75 rather than 100,000, we need to be keeping in our heads if our reserve, if that deficit opens up more between the budget, the projected revenues and expenditures opens up more, the magic number's got to be about 75,000 additional opening up rather than the 100 that we had thought as a sort of trigger point. But I'm not eager to do it this way.
Well, I've got 4 down for wait so far.
We'll make a motion to
Okay.
do. Bruce?
I was going to sort of offer a contrarian view. I think one of the issues you've got here is the staff resourcing is always tight. There's always a lot of stuff going on. Notwithstanding, this would be a big planning effort. We ask, there's a lot of stuff we've got going on. There's a lot of stuff staff's got going on day in and day out. What they're asking for here is more planning runway to figure something like this out. I think if they're more or less making that request, and if we don't need the days, we can use it as, essentially turn them into paid vacation days instead of non-paid vacation days, which is what they are, I'd be comfortable supporting it and letting them work through the details, and then we can decide the financial aspects of the thing down the road.
Phil?
And my comment would be, one of the things that we did discuss is that we'd be looking at areas of shared pain. There's a reduction in city services that come along with this, as opposed to looking to scrounge and scrape later on during the year to find it in other budget locations. So unless folks are saying they're willing to abandon our initial concept of a balanced budget, and I'd say this would be something that'll let them go through the logistics and have the, as Bruce has mentioned, the runway for planning. In that way, we at least know what the first one would be involved.
Okay, get this going. I'm going to ask that Bruce make a motion. And before you do that, no, after you do that, go ahead.
I'll move that that the staff plan as presented by Deputy City Manager Phil Cortez be adopted for implementation of 2 furlough days on February 14th and May 27th of 2011.
Okay, it's been moved. Second. And seconded to implement 2 furlough days, February 14th and May 27th. Now discussion. Council, Bruce and I were at a fire partner meeting when we went over the budget a month or so ago, and Highlands Ranch asked that we contact them before we implement any furloughs that would affect the fire department. And that we do that in a sequence that they could discuss that during their regularly scheduled meetings. Any other discussion?
Yes, oops.
Peggy?
I don't like the notion of if we have the furlough days and then we didn't really need them, then they're treated as vacation days, whatever. I mean, however we're looking at that. I don't know how many vacation days minimum, what the minimum number that some people get is. Maybe it's only a week, is it? Anybody get as little? But whatever it is, if you wind up taking two furlough days that are sort of vacation days, then it kind of screws up any longer block of time later. I mean, it seems to me, well, if this were me, and I never had paid vacation days teaching, but I'd want to have longer, I'd want to have chunks of time, not piddled out here and there in this way. Now, if the budget's in trouble, then we're all in trouble. So, but right now we're not. So,
Deb?
Of it. Difficulty with that concept too. I guess I look at it from the perspective of we shut down the city for a day and then months later we realize, well, I guess we didn't need to. We still have the money. Employees get paid, still not quite getting that. But what do we do about the fact that we shut down the city for a day and the citizens didn't get an opportunity to use any of the city services? Whether it was a day where, these are days you've picked that are lower traffic, lower activity, it still totally impacts every single citizen in the community that the services are, the buildings are shut down for the day. And I just don't feel like playing with that. I feel like if we need them, we need them. If we don't need them, we don't take them. Bruce, I'm sorry, I can't support your motion.
Further discussion? I'm going to be voting against this because I don't want to take them until we need them. But I appreciate you guys identifying to us the logistical problems that there would be if we implemented them. But I think we just take that into consideration if, when we do the review, we find that we're in a situation that we think we need to do something to reduce expenditures.
I wanted to counterbalance, though, Peggy's comment that we're not in trouble. We will be spending more money than we're taking in 2010. We did that in 2009. We did it in 2008. And Doug, if my memory is correct, we also did it in 2007, that we've run deficit spending over a period of 4 years. And our intent, going back to the workshop last year, was to have a balanced budget and to collectively target that for 2011.
I need to respond to that.
Sure.
I did argue that we bring the budget totally in line, and we didn't do it. So the budget that we have, yes, we are spending a little more than the projected revenues, but I certainly wasn't encouraging us to have that much, even that much out of balance. But we did agree that we would look quarterly to see if that gap was widening, and that's why I say we're not in trouble right now. The gap isn't widening. It's narrowing at least a bit, if I understand. So that's why I think this is not the right time to be doing this.
All right, council, ready to vote? The motion is to implement 2 furlough days on 2/14 and 5/27 of next year. A yes vote will get you 2 days, a no vote will get you nothing.
The vote is 2 in favor, with Councilwoman Cole, Councilman Taylor, Councilman Clark, Councilwoman Brinkman, and Councilman Trujillo voting no. The motion fails.
Okay, thanks, guys. Next is the purchase of Littleton Boulevard 2009.
Council, I sent out an email to you. I apologize if you didn't get it, but I'll verbally cover it. If you recall, a couple of months ago, you had authorized us to go under contract with Littleton Capital Partners for the purchase of what's known as the Sternberg building. Part of that was a 60-day inspection period. That expired on Friday. Steve Kurtz, who's a partner with Littleton Capital Partners, contacted myself and Kirsten Crawford, the deputy city attorney who'd been working on it, and said he'd like an extension. He is still looking at some technical issues like parking. He's been meeting with Charlie Bloston and isn't quite where he'd like to be yet. So he's requested a 45-day extension. And in talking with Suzanne, we felt like we needed to bring it back to council. Have you authorized that? We don't see a big problem with it. It'll give him a chance to just see if he can tie down some of his technical issues. And so we have a motion that basically would grant that 45-day inspection period and also authorize Suzanne to make any minor modifications that would be necessary to make that amendment.
Questions for Mr. Woods? Does somebody have the motion they want to make? Peggy?
I move that Section 5.2 of the Agreement for the Purchase and Sale of Real Estate located at 2009 West Littleton Boulevard be amended to grant the purchaser an extension of 45 days up to and including January 20th, 2011 to complete the inspection period, and that the city attorney be authorized to make minor modifications to the agreement prior to execution.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to give the 45-day extension and the city attorney some latitude. Phil?
2 questions, Jim. With the extension in that 45 days, how much is that worth to the purchaser?
I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, what happens if we don't grant that 45-day extension?
We get the building back.
We get the, yes, sir.
And we return the earnest.
And we return the earnest money.
We get 17 new parking spaces there.
Thank you.
And a storage
Park on
shed.
the street, in other words.
Yeah. Further discussion? Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay, that brings us to item 9D. which I don't think applies anymore.
Right, so what's the protocol to just ignore that?
Why don't you just move to postpone it indefinitely?
I move to well, there's no motion on the table, so.
Good point.
I move to delete agenda item 9D.
Okay, that'll work.
Second.
Jim gets the second this time. The motion is to,
Bill. It was actually Phil.
oh, did he beat you?
Yes.
Okay. Phil gets the second. Okay, the motion is to delete agenda item 9D. Favor?
The motion, I'm sorry, the vote is 7 in favor, the motion's approved.
Mr. City Manager, reports.
I don't have anything additional tonight, Council.
Ms. City Attorney.
I have nothing.
Dr. Cole.
Okay, I have several things. First, I encourage everyone who hasn't already to remember those who lost their lives or were injured or fought at Pearl Harbor. Not too many around anymore, but some certainly did. So just want to remember them. Then on a much happier note, I want to thank everybody who was responsible for making Candlelight Walk such a wonderful event, and especially the city crew that did all the decorating. Really super. And whoever was in charge of weather, let's hire them next year. So then belated happy birthday to Phil Cernanek and Jim Taylor. They have birthdays since our last meeting, and there is a cake for anybody who wants cake, birthday cake in the community room. We hope you'll share that. Then also thanks to everybody who's been helping with the Santa Claus shop. They have lots and lots of toys over there ready for Santa's elves to come and pick up. Then on a serious request, I would like to request that South Suburban Parks and Rec, who manage our parks, put asphalt on the remaining dirt gravel piece in Stern Park. That's on the southeast border of the park. Most of the rest of it is, where there's trail, is asphalt paving, including some that was just replaced less than 2 months ago, maybe less than a month ago. And I have been told before this might require a public hearing to do that. I don't know, but the reason that I'm concerned with this, there are a lot of people who do use the park, and including that piece of the park. But when we get the bad snows, that can't really be plowed. It was plowed at least once last year, but it can't be plowed the same way the asphalt, the paved trails can be, as they can in Kettering and South Platte Park and all. So it gets packed down, then it makes it even more exciting.
We'll certainly contact the
I mentioned it to Dave Lorenz after the breakfast last week, so.
Was that where he suggested it might require a public hearing?
No, because I think I think Charlie, when I mentioned this to him a year or so ago, and then Dave Lorenz both thought that it might require a public hearing.
Okay. Would you like some clarification of that?
Yeah, but, if we don't need the public hearing. But there are plenty of people of all ages, several who are much older than I am, who do use the park regularly during the winter. I mean, and other times, too.
Is this parking
Mr.
area?
Bloston says he'd like to comment on it right now.
It's trail. It's along the southeast edge that a lot of people don't see when they go to the fireworks and all.
There won't be any paving, at least until April or May.
That's all right. I'm just requesting when it can get done.
When it can be paid.
Yeah, no, I didn't figure it was going to get done this winter.
Okay. We will check with South Suburban to see if that's part of the master plan first, and whether or not the plan has to be changed to make that improvement, or if it can just be done, and what the cost will be. So we'll have to get that information back to you.
Yeah.
But as I said, the asphalt plant's the last one we know of that's open, closes on Friday.
No, and it's okay. I just figure if I don't ask,
I just wanted to clarify that. Very
won't
good.
ever get in the pipeline. Thank you. Oh, and then one other thing. What is the plan for filling the vacancies at the library? I think we have three full-time and 2 part-time positions, and I can tell you, I know that they're really scrambling over there.
I'll ask Mr. Cortez, who's been working with HR and I think the library staff.
We hear that from all departments that have vacancies, and we take them on an individual basis to see what the need is. And in most cases, not in every case, library right now is going through an efficiency study, in which by the middle of February we should have some understanding of that. And we feel there is some economy of scale, or not scale, but there is some savings that we might be able to realize. And if we fill those positions, we'll take a look at it. Jim and I had talked at the first of the year where we're going to go through all the vacancies and kind of reassess where we are with those. So we take it on a case-by-case basis.
And I'm glad you mentioned the study. Is it possible for council members to get a copy of that, just as we did
This is a different,
with some of the others?
Yeah, we're doing this a bit differently, in a sense that we are, how can I say this? It's a work in progress right through the meetings that we're having. We identified, I think, something like, what was it? Where is he? Something like, I don't know, 78 different processes that they do at the library. And what we're discovering is there's some duplication in some of the things that they do, and we're not sure why they do certain things. So we're meeting, we have a team, which is the IS department, Ken and Eric, and then we have an outside consultant who helps us on the technology part. So in the short answer, it's a work in progress. There really isn't any results that
But,
we've
I
seen
mean,
yet.
wasn't there a report from
There was a
the-
report that there is and I certainly can make that public. It's a very cursive, very not in-depth. It's just basically saying there's a lot of comparison to what other libraries are doing, for instance, to compare to what we're doing. There's some inefficiencies, for instance, in the card reader that we have, where we found that in some libraries they have a higher rate of efficiency, and we're going to study that. So I can certainly make available, it wasn't a formally written, it was more bullets and a discussion that we had with the consultant to say, does it merit us going into the library and looking at, as just looking compared across other libraries?
I think we could read it in that
All right.
context.
I can do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bill? Yes, the South Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce has an economic development group meeting on this Friday. Also at the chamber location this afternoon, the responsible government group had a presentation by one present and one past chief of staff to the governor that was kind of certainly was a very interesting sharing of how some of our state government really works, and it was kind of enlightening, and folks would certainly understand some of the complexities that we would have after listening to some of that. Historic Preservation Board will not be having a regular meeting this month. However, they will be having a workshop that is now scheduled at the courthouse on Thursday evening at 7 p.m. With the design attributes and characteristics and parameters for the downtown historic district, and they're looking for certainly participants with that. Hudson Holiday continues this weekend on Friday and Saturday evenings, and then starting the 17th, it will be every day except for except I believe for Christmas on the 17th of December through the 2nd of January. Also, just to put it on a little bit of the television piece, is the Snow Squad is looking for volunteers, so reach out and contact Mark Behrens for that. If you're looking for some extra physical activity for your teenager to help some of those that may not be as physically adept in working, certainly that would be a time to get them out in the nice fresh air of Colorado. With that, on to you, Jim.
I attended the Public-Private Partnership Symposium that was sponsored by the Colorado High Performance Transportation Enterprise. We talked about the benefits and the risk and the values that you get for dollars using this enterprise. And the case study that was presented after the break was on the Denver Fast Tracks, RTD's Fast Tracks program and the Eagle 3P project that's going on. The National League of Cities meeting was in Denver last week. I attended the advisory committee meetings, community and economic development meetings, small cities meetings, first-tier suburb, University Community Caucus meetings, general sessions, City Future on Democratic Governments, and Western Municipal Association. And I was not selected to be on the board of directors. I do thank you for all of your support, but it's not to be.
They must have gotten one Cracker Jack if they didn't get you.
Well, there's a story behind that. I was at the CML policy meeting today, and we heard from Jason Schrock, who is an economist with the State Budget Office, on the outlook for next year and the next 2 years. And their predictions are there will be some growth in the economy, and that is encouraging. On the other side of it is the growth in population is going to offset some of that growth in the economy, he predicted. And then at noontime, we had a talk by Adam Schrager, who was talking about the state of politics in the Colorado. The committee took positions on various proposed legislation that's coming up that will be recommended to the Municipal League Executive Board. The also got a preliminary report on the survey of cities and towns in Colorado, with some very interesting statistics in that. The report will be released in January. That's all.
Yep.
No report, but I do want to just send out a thank you to the folks that, if I get the name wrong, I sincerely apologize. Natural Surroundings, the building at the at the Alamo and Littleton Boulevard, with all the lighting that Charlie does out downtown, and especially those beautiful trees and by the melting pot. It is just that entryway there, and you've got an independent merchant who, they're all trying to figure out how to keep ends meeting too. And every year they just do such an incredible job on that building, and I just appreciate it. I think it's just a great gift they give to the city each year. And the Masonic, I believe it's the Masonic building next door, they've got their building lit up too, and it's just such a beautiful entryway. Send out, so thank you to those folks.
Can I make a comment along lighting? This is primarily for Charlie's ears, but I think when you look at the lighting on the courthouse, it just pales in comparison to what they're doing in other historic buildings. If you take a look at comparison with that, with what's at the courthouse, there is no comparison. In other words, I'd like to see more lights on the courthouse.
I was going to say, that's not good.
Great, you should mention that.
Bruce. Charlie, as long as you're talking to South Suburban anyway about Stern Park, can you see if they seem to be in a little slack maybe in whacking away at the underbrush over there at the north side of Kettering, which they have traditionally kept after and want to make sure that sort of stays cleaned up a little bit for all the issues they've had up there. Fine Arts Committee was met on the 18th of November, had a real nice video review of a lot of the fine art pieces. Ms. Nardi, was that something you guys put together for them? Yeah, that was great. It's on the loop. Okay, yeah, it's little snippets of or a big chunk of the art pieces that are out there with some explanation of what they are, where they're located, the artist, this kind of thing, the outdoor art pieces. It is very well done. Let me see here. We did talk, we discussed a little bit, Curator Nims had indicated, given the committee a bit of heads up as to some programming notes as far as the Fine Arts Committee and the museum based on next year's budget. And then we had a bit of a discussion over longer term, the direction of the acquisitions budget and what might, occur to restore that at some point in time in the future. And I think, let's see, the Onan Original is up and running. Eye of the Camera, I think, starts on the 18th of February and actually runs through the 3rd of April, and those are a couple of the signature programs for the museum. Speaking of the museum, the Friends of the Library Museum Holidays Eve is the 12th of December. If you don't have your tickets, you want to slide by the museum or the library, pick those bad boys up because it's an event not to be missed. And the ever-popular, often imitated, never duplicated Merchant Plug of the Week this week is so obvious, I even hesitate to even say it because I know you're all thinking it. It's the only merchant in town that you would think of at this point in time, given the holiday season.
St. Nick's.
Bingo. So shout out to St. Nick's over on the frontage road north of Prince on Santa Fe. 20,000 feet of holiday goodness and cheer. You go in there, there's people running all over the place, tons of people helping you out. Every conceivable holiday festive ornament or decoration you can possibly imagine. I went a bit more sustainable last year, and that was precipitated by a lighted wreath that I could no longer get lit, and went over to St. Nick's and purchased a big bow that sticks on the side of the house, and a couple of spotlights later, bada bing, bada boom, you're done. So, but you don't have to be quite as environmentally friendly as I am. If you want to light your house up like downtown Main Street, you know where to go. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
Question for Councilman. Certainly it was covered in the Littleton Independent about the lack of availability of the study that's being done by our partners in fire and rescue protection. Can you comment, will that report be made available to either city staff, city council, some way so that we can also learn by it?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. The Fire Protection District has communicated to me that when the study is available and released in final form, city staff will receive a copy of it, and ostensibly, we'll see it as well. So I do not know when that will happen. I think it's maybe there was an expectation it would happen in December. As the month progresses, I don't know. I think the next Fire Protection District meeting is on the 13th, sticks in my mind. Anyway, we'll certainly follow up at that point in time and get back to you.
Thank you.
Jose? Interfaith Task Force is serving a lot of people right now, so it's requiring a lot of foodstuffs and donations. The Town Hall Arts Center is doing well with their performance of White Christmas. And I have a question for you. Everybody seems to remember where they were when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. But I want to know how many people remember where they were when the Second World War started, December 7th, today.
Only by hearsay.
I could tell you, Joe.
I was a twinkle in someone's eye, Joe, at best.
You and I are the only ones old enough to remember that. But I will tell you, I lived so far out in the country that we didn't know it even happened till the next day.
Yeah.
Because it didn't have radios. We didn't have telephone. There was
Smoke
nothing
signals. That was it.
Like, smoke signals is what we actually used.
But I know my dad was in
Well,
high school.
There's, I was about 9 years old then, 8 years old, and I always remember the Song of White Christmas being such a kind of a lonely song because in 1943, on December 14th, our brother came home for Christmas in a casket, and he was in the Navy. And you kind of remember those things that we had 4 brothers in the service, 2 in the Pacific. My brother Bart was on the USS Santa Fe, the lucky lady that never was taken out of action in the whole Second World War. It was hit several times by kamikaze, but not enough to put it out of commission. Brother Louis was ferrying the Marines in to the islands, and my brother Paul was in the North Atlantic. So we had 4 then, and our parents were pretty proud of their boys because there was 7 of us that were served in service. So, you kind of remember, you go back to those days when you can think about the ones that did come home. A lot of them never came home. A lot of them were killed on the islands that were from Littleton. And so you think back, and it's a lot of history that a lot of young people don't know about today. They seem to just pass it up in schools. They don't want anybody to know that there was vicious wars going on. And so when you think about the guys that are out there now, I might say a prayer for them. It's really astounding to me that we stopped the draft at a certain time and we started having a professional army. Now, some of these boys have been going back and forth now 3 or 4 times into battle, whereas that probably wouldn't happen if we had the draft because they move them around. They had enough guys to move around. And I was disappointed when they did away with the draft because it also takes away a lot of the kids coming right out of school, and he gets off mama's tit and gets them a little bit of discipline, which they need. And the only one that can do it is some DI or sergeant out there in the service that will kick them in the butt, so to say, and wise them up a little bit. They come home better men, better mentalities. They think more about themselves. And we've lost a lot of that with our kids. It just, it's a sad thing. And so that's it for tonight.
Okay. Tomorrow, December 8th, is Colorado Gives Day, which is a day all 24 hours. Starts 12:01, where people can make online contributions to probably any charity of their choice. When I looked, there was over 300 charities that had registered. The transaction fee for making a donation is being picked up by the sponsors. In this case, First Bank pays for the transaction fee. The URL is www.givingfirst.org, and then you can just select whichever charity you want to contribute to, and they will take your credit or debit card to effect a donation. So I remind you, if you're thinking of contributing for the holidays, this would maximize the amount of money that would go to the charity. We are meeting with the Inglewood Sewer Plant on the 9th. I would like to propose that we add 3 items to the agenda. I sent this out to you all on the email a day or 2 ago. Those 3 items would be annual status of the plant operations, status on the sale of the farmland, and a discussion on the actual capacity versus permitted capacity at the plant. And I think it'd be best for us to make that decision as a council on whether we want to do that. So I move that we add these 3 items to the agenda for December 9th meeting with Englewood.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to add the items. Discussion.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. Jim, Dr. Cog report.
The Advisory Committee on Aging determined the service priorities for funding. We're expecting the state to cut funding substantially with their budget crisis, and we need to establish what our priorities are going to be. Part of our meeting was hearing from the service providers that deal with targeted populations. In other words, the Native Americans, the rural elderly, the mountain poor, the respite care, hospice care, that type of thing, and the service providers who provide that service through funding that they get from Dr. Cog. The Administrative Committee adopted several resolutions on contracts and selected 2 members to serve on the Nominating Committee and negotiated amendments with the Executive Director's contract. At the Board of Directors meeting, the Board selected 2 members and the Chair appointed 2 members to serve on the Nominating Committee. If you notice, that's a 6-member committee. We did that on purpose. Had briefing on the Western High-Speed Rail. We approved a letter to de-designate Dr. Cog as a State 208 agency for wastewater planning. We had a presentation on highway devolution study and the Bridge Enterprise Program. A briefing on the 2035 plan and the travel mode outcomes and available analysis. And that was presented by a young man at Dr. Cog who's only one of 5 metropolitan planning organizations in the country that provides this service, and Eric is recognized as probably the outstanding person able to do that. He's called upon by many other MPOs to come make presentations on travel modes and available plans that they can do. So.
All right, we need a motion to go into executive session. Deb?
Make a motion to conduct an executive session pursuant to Section 24-6-402, Prin 4, Prin B, and 24-6-402, Prin 4, Prin E, to receive legal advice and instruct negotiators regarding Denver water contract.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to go in executive session to receive legal advice and instruct negotiators on Denver water contract. This takes 5 votes. Any discussion?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilman Trujillo voting no. The motion's approved.
And then that it would be Suzanne,
Jim Woods, Phil,
Charlie.
Mr. Bloston.
Charlie. And we will not be conducting any business when we come back after the executive session, so this will end the televised portion of the meeting. Let's
Where are we going?
let's take a 10-minute break.
In which room?
Building conference room.